Good evening, everybody, and welcome to another episode of Songwriting Simplified with me, Jonny Lipsham, over here at jonnylipshamstudios.co.uk, here in Scotland, the capital of the world, capital of everything, and that's it. That's the end of the story. Me and my stupid intros. Anyway, I hope everybody has had a good week so far. So far, so good here. It's been quite a busy one. I'm trying to adjust my chair because I feel like I'm not very straight in the camera for some reason. But anyway, I hope everyone's had a good first half of their week. It's been a good one here. It's been quite busy. Leg, for those of you that are wanting to know, is very, very slowly getting better. Infection is still there, but it's not so painful anymore, which is good because I'm taking these little... I don't want to even say the word because it's very rude. And they're not very nice, and the side effects are not very pleasant, but they appear to be doing their job, which is the important thing. So tonight, we're going to be talking about a range of things because we have had a couple of questions not actually in chat here, but over on another private chat that I've been involved in, which some of the folks that are here are involved with, and there are some questions asked there, so I'm going to kind of dive into one or two of those as well. And Ronald Figura has a question as well, which is actually quite an important question, so we will get to that. And so who do we have here? We've got Sean White Jr., who was here first of all at 9 p.m. UK time, so that's like 3 hours ahead of showtime. That is early. And my dear friend Christina over in Denmark is here as well, although she says possibly sleeping. Will enjoy tomorrow. Have a nice sleep, my dear, and I will talk to you tomorrow, hopefully. So she has dropped in to say that, which is very kind. And Paul Morgan is here, and the sponsor of tonight's show, my good friend Louis at Alps Media LLC is here. If you need Personas gear, he's the guy to go to, especially if you're in the United States and the North American continent. If you're on that continent, then he is the guy to go to for all of your Personas gear. Who am I talking about? Not you, Mike. And we got Billy Morgan here as well. And as I said, Ronald Figura is here. And of course, Keith at Radio Tuck Trumpet is here as well. And Dwayne is here saying howdy. And of course, Mike Johnson, who just walked in the door, which is awesome. So yes, Mike, yes. I was talking about Christina, not talking about you. Although you did ask some interesting questions to me earlier. So I'll maybe tackle at least one or two of those. Bearing in mind that when it comes to the legal side of songwriting, I'm definitely not an expert at all. So, I have my own views and I have some understanding of the subject, but I'm not an expert. And I do know people that are experts. And I certainly am not one of those. So I wouldn't want to give you incorrect information, but I will try and give some broad overview on that subject, which is all to do with copyright. We've kind of talked about copyright a little bit before. And trust me when I tell you that copyright is a minefield, and a certain Mr. Ed Sheeran would be able to attest to that because he has won one case and is now in the midst of another case. So he knows how incredibly complex it is. And actually, copyright law seems to get more and more complex as time goes by. Particularly the scope of what is copyrightable, if there is such a phrase as that, seems to have kind of changed a wee bit. So it used to just be melody and words that were the focus of what is copyrightable. So your lyrics and the melody, and everything else that constitutes the arrangement is not really subject to the same kind of copyright law. So things like chord changes, not copyrightable. Bass parts, unless the bass part constitutes part of a melody. For example, Jaco Pastorius is the chicken. the bass part there constitutes an intrinsic part of the melody of the piece of music. So in that particular case, that is copyrightable, that particular bass part. Certainly the first kind of 4 measures of the bass part is copyrightable because it is the theme and it's regarded as thematic material. So this is the problem when you're dealing with copyright law, is you are also dealing with musicology. And although I am a musicologist, when it comes to the actual copyright side of things, I'm not an expert. So, yeah. All right, so let's go and take a look at what we got here. So, Ronald has a question, which I'm going to answer right now, and then I'm going to get into the kind of thing that I want to talk about tonight. Ronald says, does songwriting need to be an inspired thing? Inspired in quote marks. Now, that's an interesting one because if that was 100% the case, if it was 100% the case that songwriting is an inspired thing, basically you only write songs when you are inspired to write a song, then you could be sitting around for years waiting for the muse, whatever that is, to come up and whisper into your ear and say, hey, how about these chord changes? How about these lyrics? How about this idea? How about this melody? You could be waiting a very, very long time for that to happen. So, most professional songwriters, and certainly this dates back to the 1920s and 1930s in places like Tin Pan Alley, where they had big buildings like the Brill Building. And in that building, there were lots of little offices, small cubicle-style offices. And people like Irving Berlin, George and Ira Gershwin, and Rodgers and Hammerstein, they worked in that building. And they had a small little office, and that small little office had a piano in it and lots of sheet music paper. What was their job? Their job was to write songs like a production line, like a factory. That was their job. And what they did was they wrote songs according to a specific set of instructions, a specific set of guidelines. And they would have to churn out 30 or 40 songs per week. And then these songs would get compiled into songbooks. And then those songbooks would be sold in music stores and bookstores all around the United States. And then eventually around the world. And that's how songs like I Got Rhythm and My Funny Valentine, and I'm trying to think of a few other well-known standards, Slow Boat to China, a whole bunch of what we now regard as standards were written in those little cubicles, and they were among the 30 or 40 songs a week that they had to write. So this meant that they had to be in that building 8 o'clock in the morning until 5:30 at night, and all they would do was write songs. So that meant they had to distill the songwriting process down into bare essentials and into procedures that could be repeated over and over and over again. Now, you would think that you would therefore produce a lot of music that is incredibly bland and formulaic, and certainly some of it was. But, on the other hand, you have a whole bunch of songs that are actually really, really gorgeous, wonderful songs. Like My Funny Valentine. It's a beautiful song. Or I Got Rhythm, which is a classic song that has, in fact, spawned an entire style of jazz altogether. You know, it could be argued that bebop was born out of the chord changes to I Got Rhythm, or the chord changes to Cherokee, for example. So when it comes to copyright and things like that, chord changes have never really been the subject of copyright, but that's kind of like a whole nother subject, which is why you could have the chord changes to I Got Rhythm, and upon that set of chord changes, you could write a whole bunch of new melodies, or the chord changes to Cherokee, or there's a whole range of standards upon which new melodies have been written on top, and those melodies then become an entire piece, an entire standard in its own right, and that makes money all by itself. But, you know, somebody else came up with the chord changes, particularly for Cherokee, where the chord changes are actually really quite distinct sounding. And yet, you know, the person that writes the new melody on top of those songs, they get the composer credit. The person that came up with the chord changes for Cherokee doesn't. It is what it is. And I guess that's possibly why there is this now debate as to whether chord changes should be included in copyright. But that would mean everybody would have to stop writing songs because if you start writing a blues song, you're going to use chords 1, 4, and 5. If somebody copyrights chords 1, 4, and 5 in a set of chord changes, nobody can write a blues music ever again without giving a percentage of the royalties to that person that copyrights those chord changes. That presents a massive problem for music. So, kind of hoping that that doesn't happen. Inspired, not inspired, do I wait for inspiration, or do I just sit down and work at it like, like it's my job? I mean, you talk to novelists, like Robert Harris, for example. Robert Harris was interviewed many, many years ago about his process for writing his novels, because, I mean, he's relatively prolific. He puts out a lot of books, a lot of novels. He was asked, how do you write your novels? Do you wait? Do you sit and wait for the ideas to come to you? Or what? And he goes, no, I get into my study 8 o'clock every morning and I start to write. Some days he has a plot. Some days he has characters. Some days he doesn't. Some days, nothing really good comes out of that day. But it's okay. It's a process. It's a schedule that you keep. It's like an athlete who trains. A professional soccer player isn't just about those 90 minutes on the Saturday or the Sunday when they play their league games or their World Cup matches or their whatever tournament they're involved in. There's a lot of training that goes into it. Monday through Friday, they're at the training ground at 7 o'clock in the morning and they're doing their warm-up routine. By 8 o'clock in the morning, they've started doing their drills and all sorts of other things that take place. And then, they will train throughout the day, Monday through Friday. There's things that they practice. There's things that they work on. There's things that they personally work on. And then there's things that they work on as a team. And so it is with developing any skill to a very, very high level. If you want to be a really, really good songwriter, you got to write songs. And that means there's going to be a lot of songs that you will discard. But there will be some songs which you'll go, those are outstanding. Those are great. Those are really good songs. I'm really proud of those. Those are going to go on my record. So, for example, if you have a record and you're going to record 12 songs for this record, well, you could just write 12 songs and that's your record. Not many people can write 12 good songs and, call it a day. And then they go into recording for those 12 songs. Most people, to get 12 really good songs, will have to write 40 or 50. That's most people. Most people need to write a lot of songs in order to have a dozen good songs. So I think that is a big part of the process. In order to have a muscle in your body that works to a very high level, or a set of muscles that work to a very, very high level, then you've got to work them hard. A little bit of blood, a little bit of sweat, a little bit of tears. Those are kind of the three ingredients to success, really: blood, sweat, and tears, in my opinion. If you want to be a great saxophone player, you're going to have to put in the time those hours to just making long notes, so that you are, getting your embouchure, the muscles around here for your embouchure and your jaw strong, so that embouchure is secure all the time, and so that your tone is clear all the time. And so when you're making low notes on the saxophone, they sound full and round and pitch accurate with good intonation. Likewise, when you go up into the altissimo register, those notes are clear. And, you know, they are in tune. So I think so it is with songwriting. You have to treat songwriting like practicing anything else in music. You want to be a good guitar player? You got to practice. You want to be a good songwriter? You got to practice. You want to be a good arranger? You got to practice. I think it's the same thing. And so I think the percentage of which what you do as a songwriter is actual inspiration is a very small percent. I think it may be less than 10%, and then the rest of it is perspiration, it's hard work, it's practice. And that's what I personally think that it boils down to. If you want to be good, that's if you want to be good and you want to have good songs that you're proud of, you got to put the work in, and you got to put the effort in, and you got to be prepared to discard things when they're not good. You got to have good, high standards for what you do. But that's a great question, Ronald. Really good question. Really important question. Rich says, keeping things short, have you ever thought of having a screen capture for keys so folks can see what you play in real time? That's a great question. I don't know how to go about doing that. And also, I only have one camera. And I don't think my graphics card would handle another camera. I have thought about it. I have thought about putting a camera kind of on a boom arm that looks down over my head, so that you can see you can get a better shot of the keyboard. But I don't think my graphics card would handle another camera, to be honest. But it's a good question. And Rich also says here, he says, I think the same applies to arrangement. You can write a 10-minute song and only pick 5 of those minutes. Yes. Yeah, for sure. Sometimes, you know, a song doesn't have to be, it doesn't have to be a long song. I mean, you know, most people have a pretty short attention span. And really, if you're going to write a long song, there's got to be lots of different elements that make up that song to make it work, so that the listeners always got their attention engaged in the song. So, you know, lots of counter melodies, lots of ear candy is what I call it. You got to have a lot of ear candy, which means your arrangement is going to have to be pretty complex. And so if your arrangement is complex, there's a lot of different things you've got to balance one off against the other. So, you know, organizationally, that can become a bit of a challenge. And then balance-wise, for the song, it can become challenging. And then, of course, later down the line for mixing, it might be a challenge because you've got lots of different elements that you will want to have in the song that are happening. If not at the same time, then certainly relatively soon after one event has happened, another event is going off. So, yeah, for sure. That's a great song, though. A great song? A great question is what I meant. Inspiration. Yeah, it's an important thing. All right, so one of the things I wanted to talk about, and then I'm going to take a few more questions once I've got this off my chest, is we talked about a little bit about chords and chord inversion. Last Wednesday, we looked at inverting chords. Because when you have inverted chords, it's easy to move from one chord to another. Like from this C major chord to F major. That's the first inversion chord because the third is at the bottom of the chord. Going to a root position F major. Nice and easy to get to. So it's nice and easy to get to, and the voice leading, which is something else that's really important, is nice and smooth. So we've got the E going up to an F, it's a half step move. Okay, and then we've got the G moving by step. So if you had 3 voices, literally 3 people singing that as a 3-part harmony, that would be dead easy to sing. And then this person stays constant on that note. And already you've got a really interesting little vamp. And just like that, you can make a song out of that straight away. And I've done no work. I've done no work at all. All I've done is used first inversion to root position, and then to make it a little bit interesting, I moved the 5 up to a 6 and then back down again on that F major chord. So there's the 5th chord going up to the 6th and then back down again. Whoops. And then I can go down to a G chord here. So I could go. And then I'm back to 1. So there, I've got a melody and I've got some harmony and I've got some chord changes with one hand, not even looking at the keyboard when I'm doing it. And that took me all of about 30 seconds to do. Now, I've got a lot of practice. I've got a lot of experience. I've done this thousands and thousands of times, which is why I can do it without looking. But there was no inspiration there. I wasn't waiting for any kind of inspiration. I just played. I just made some chords. And then thought, hey, why don't I just, to make it a little bit more interesting, just going C to F, which is fine. Might get a little boring after a while. So maybe maybe every other time that I do that, I do this little. So maybe I go 1, 2, 3, 4. And already you've got a little 4-bar vamp. And you can build an entire song just out of that. So no inspiration, very little perspiration, just applying a little bit of music theory and a little bit of know-how. 4. Just like that. And that's just chord inversions. So we talked about that last week. There's another little reminder of how powerful inversions can be. So let's talk about 7th chords. Seeing as there are several types, and because we're adding from 3 notes to 4 notes, we have some more inversions to play with. And some of them sound really, really cool. And some of them are very, very useful. All right, so if we start with the root position C major chord, we have the root, the 3rd, and the 5th. So how do we get the 7th? We miss a note, and we play the next one. And now we have a major 7th. Okay? And then if you were to flat that, you get a flatted 7th or a minor 7th. Okay? So, if I now play all 4 of those notes, and then if I do my inversion trick, which is what I did last week, I take the bottom off and put it on the top. So take that low C and put it on the top. Everything else moves up. Now I've got first inversion. Do the same again. Put the 3rd from the bottom, put it up the octave. So that's second inversion. And with a 3-note chord, you'd stop there. You'd only have root, 1st, and 2nd. We have a 3rd inversion here. And this is where we put the 7th at the bottom. And this is probably my favorite inversion of a major 7th chord. Because you've got that dissonance there. And I like that dissonance. It's nice and crunchy. And I think a certain Mr. John Williams also liked it, because he likes doing this. He likes major 7ths voiced in that 3rd inversion. So, but he also likes them in the 2nd inversion as well. But that's just not quite so common in a John Williams score. But it does happen. Not quite so common. That kind of 3rd inversion is what you tend to hear most often from Mr. John Williams, which I think he borrowed shamelessly from Gustav Holst, But that's another story entirely. So those are the inversions that you have with a 4-note chord. You have a root, first, second, and a third. So if we have a major 7th, how do we make this into a dominant? Well, we flat the 7th. So we take that B, drop it down a semitone, and now we've got a dominant. Dominant chords are very, very powerful because they take you to a new key. Not to new key as in Newquay Cornwall, but to a new key. So if I have C7 here, that takes me to F. 5, 1. I did a little 6 thing there. And so on, all the way around the cycle of fifths. So 7th chords are really, really powerful. You can use them as a vamp as well, without ever resolving them to the 1. And you just never need to resolve that ever, if you don't want to. And even then, if you do go to chord to the next, to basically going to from, if you were to treat this as a 5, going to 1, you might turn that into a 7th and make it a bit more bluesy. So that's the dominant 7th. We call that the dominant 7th when you have the flatted 7th. Now, minor 7ths is the next one. This time we take that dominant 7th and we make it darker. How do we do that? We flatten the 3rd. So this major 3rd, which is nice and bright and happy, drop it down a semitone, and now we've got Mr. Dark minor, C minor. Nice and dark, and so, you know, minor blues sounds nice with this. Also, reggae is quite nice in this. So, you know, that can work. So that's minor. Let's make it a little bit darker. Darker still. This is where we get our half diminished chord. So this time we flatten the 5th because we flattened everything else. And you can't flatten the root. So kind of a bit weird sounding, a bit dark sounding. Now, there is a lot of use for these half diminished chords because they form part of the minor 2-5-1. So if we go to, let's say we're in the key of C minor. If I want to do a 2-5-1 in C minor, I need to do chord 2, but that's not going to be D minor because of the C minor scale. We need that A flat in there. So the fact that we have that A flat in there makes this D minor into a half diminished chord. And of course the G is going to be an augmented chord because of the E flat in the key signature. So that's where the half diminished chord is really, really helpful. Also, you can move them in parallel and make something a little bit mysterious sounding. So if we were to take this, how do I want to do this? Here we go. So it's extra specially dark. And then we go back to our C half diminished. There's one more thing you can do. You can make it even darker still. It's already pretty dark, but let's flatten the 7th again. So we've already flattened it once. We're going to double flat it. That sounds really weird. Move that in parallel, you've got something very, very disturbing happening. Something very, very dark and disturbing is happening. That's that kind of fully diminished sound. So use those sparingly. Because basically all it is just minor thirds stacked on top of each other. There's one, there's one, there's one. So they sound particularly weird. So use those ones sparingly. I like to do something extra dark with these. If I take this C minor one here, I don't need that root here because I'm already playing it in the bass. So what I like to do is I like to add a 9th to this. Just to add to some extra spice. I'll either close voice it like this, or I will put it on the top. So you get a little bit of extra darkness thrown into good measure. So we have major 7, dominant 7, minor 7, half diminished, full fat diminished. And those are your 4-note chords. By way of introduction. So how do we apply these? I've shown you a few ways in which you can apply particularly half diminished chords to a minor 2-5-1, which is great even if you're going from a major key. So let's pick a major key. Let's go A major. And let's say we want to go to C minor for some strange reason. Go back to A major. Sounds a little weird, but it's perfectly doable. It's just deciding upon what type of 2-5-1 you're going to use to get from one to the other. So half diminished chords, really useful. Dominant 7th chords, phenomenally useful. Major 7th chords, really nice, very pretty, can work really well in pop, can work really well in folk, obviously works pretty well in kind of like a smooth jazz or anything kind of Kenny G style, major seventh chords work very, very well. Almost too well, because they tend to get overdone a wee bit. Like most things, they can get overdone. So be sparing with those. All right, let's see what else we've got here. Sean White says, copyrighting chords would literally be a race to the copyright office. I personally just do the one chord in every key. Yeah, absolutely. Brett Marler says, sometimes you can have 2 or 3 songs that are rubbish on their own, but can be pieced together to make something brilliant. Yes! Excellent comment. Excellent comment. Top comment goes to Brett Marler for that. Because when I talked about discarding things, like let's say, you're on a mission to write for a 12-song record, and you may write 50 songs, and then you pick out the best 12 from those 50 songs. Don't discard all the other ones. Don't throw them away. Don't delete them from your computer. Because recycling is the name of the game when it comes to songwriting. Recycling is your friend. Because, as Brett has brilliantly pointed out here, you can take a verse from this song and a chorus from this other song and a bridge from a completely different song, and you can stitch them together, and with no work whatsoever, you can create a brand new song. Because you've already written that verse, you've already written that chorus, you've already written that bridge. You stitch them together, and you've got a new song without any effort at all. So never delete old songs or songs that you think are a little bit shit. Don't do it. Because it might be, in this context, the verse is a bit shit. But when you have this chorus from this other song, you go, hey, actually, if I put these two together, that verse isn't quite so shit anymore. It actually sounds pretty good. You put them together and you've got yourself a new song with 0 effort. It's effortless songwriting. So recycling is the name of the game. So whilst your output might be quite a lot, or rather your input, I should say, might be quite a lot for very little output sometimes, don't chuck things away, because all of that other stuff could be useful for other things. You might call it wastage, but it's not really wastage. All of that wastage can be used, recycled to make another song. Or to provide, some ear candy for a completely different song. For example, let's say you've got this really nice string arrangement that you did for this one song, but it sounds a little bit shit. It sounds a little bit saccharine. It's too sweet. It's a little bit bleh. But you've got this other song and you're just like, there's something missing from that song. Maybe it should have some strings. Instead of going, okay, I'm going to write some new strings to go with this, maybe try taking that string arrangement you did for this other song, reworking it a little bit so that harmonically it fits. You never know, the two might actually go together really well, and suddenly your string arrangement doesn't sound so bleh anymore. It sounds good. It works. So Brett has wisdom right there. Let's see, what else do we have? Okay, cool. Nice one, Mike. Secret Squirrel says, after perceiving time signature in both a wonky and generally incorrect in general, I believe that I'm on a new path. But I'm wondering if Studio One or Notion can take vocals and interpret the tone of our phrases and timing across a few measures and extract the time signature based upon how we break up syllables, sentences, etc. Not really. Time signatures are up to the composer to define. Now, when you're listening to your vocal, you might find that there is a particular pulse. If you do find that there is a particular pulse to a particular vocal that you've recorded, or a particular set of words that you've recorded, you can go, okay, I think this is where the strong beats are. This is where if there was going to be a bar line to this is where it would be. And then you can, from that, you can go, okay, so how many beats are there in each of these phrases? Okay, so there are 7 beats in this little phrase. And that's where it feels like the downbeat is, the strong beat. Then you can go, okay, so there are 7 beats in this measure. Okay, what kind of beat is this? Is this a quarter note? Is this an eighth note? What is it? And what is the tempo of that? What is the tempo of this pulse? So you might go, okay, it's 7/4. It's 7 quarter notes. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 1. That might be something that you have derived from a vocal. So if that's the case, then you know that your song probably is in 7/4 or 7/8. Something like that. But there's not really a way in which you just drop in a vocal into Studio One or into Notion and say, hey, tell me what the time signature is. No, it doesn't work like that. And as far as I'm aware, there is no DAW that does do that. And I don't think there's any other audio software that does that either. It's something that you have to work out for yourself. And then having worked that out, then you can do mathematics. If you've got just a little bit of mathematic knowledge and a little bit of an understanding of how to divide and to do fractions, things like that, then you can work out what a time signature should be. And it may well be that what you have for your vocal is uneven. And it may well be that you have a bar of 7/4, a bar of 3/8, a bar of 9/8, a bar of 5/8, a bar of 3/4, a bar of 5/4. And it might well be that that's how it goes for your particular piece of music. That's okay. It's okay to have multiple time signature changes in your piece. There are lots of pieces of music around the world that are not Western. And yet if you were to kind of try and drop them into a kind of Western metric system, you would find that there's lots of different time signature changes. Like some Indian tabla music, some Indian classical music, has multiple time signatures. You know, sometimes it'll be in 4/4, sometimes it'll be in 7/8, and sometimes you'll have 4/4, 7/8, 3/16, 4/4, 7/8, 3/16, or something like that. And that's just how it goes. That's okay. That's perfectly fine. But yeah, you can't just record something into Studio One and get it to kind of, you know, give you an answer as to what time signature this should be. And likewise with Notion. But you can have multiple time signatures. The signature track in Studio One will help you do that. And likewise in Notion as well. You can enter in different time signatures for that. Brett Muller says, if you really want to feel people on edge, there's always the minor with a major 7th, as famously used on the final chord in the James Bond theme. Yes, exactly right. Minor, major 7ths. I love these. Or I think it's kind of more like... Yeah, I like minor major 7ths as well. Yeah, minor major 7ths are very nice. Ronald says, how about a C augmented with a major 7? Yeah, C major 7 sharp 5. Here's our C major 7. Let's sharp the 5. I love those chords. You know what I like about this? It's basically an E major triad over a C. So you don't have to think of it as a C major 7 sharp 5, which can be to some people, it just sounds complicated. You can just say E over C. And it's one of my favorite chords as well. Because it's one of those chords that sounds just a little bit off kilter. In fact, there's a Donald Fagen tune, which actually starts with this. Starts with a G major triad over the C, and then an E major triad, and then it goes to F13. So it does this. Okay, so that's the major 7 sharp 5. Very, very useful chord. And there's loads of tension built into it. You went from the cheer scale to Killing Norm. Yeah, thank you very much. John Lake says, I got a flat on my car yesterday. Do not like it. You can keep your flats. That's funny. Let's see what else we've got here. John Hathwaite says, thing I do is come home from the pub in a creative mood and fire up the studio and just start playing. I record it in real time. If I come up with something I really like, I make a note. There you go. That is definitely one very good way to do it. Sean White says, the crap songs are the ones you should have a drink or shot or two and then experiment with. Yes, I think that may well be something you could certainly do. That's funny, Rich. Lock 1, Lock 2, Lock 3, Loch Lomond. Yes, absolutely. Sixwell says, fair enough, I didn't know if it could calculate from transient patterns like determining tempos. I absolutely appreciate it. Yeah, it doesn't exactly do that, but you can find a way to figure it out by looking at where, where those transients are, and then working out, you can work out by feel where a downbeat should be, by listening to this, where the strong and weak beats of the melody are, and you can go, okay, that's where a downbeat should be, that's where the next downbeat should be, and then work out how many beats there are in between each of those downbeats, and then go, okay, is this a regularly occurring pattern, or does it change? And if it changes, then you need to work out that next bit, and then the next bit, and then the next bit. But if you go, okay, this appears to be regularly occurring, repeating, that it's this many beats in a measure, okay, you've got your time signature for that period. So, G flat major 7 sharp 5 is fast becoming a favorite of mine, says Rich. Yes, G flat major 7. That sharp 5, yes, definitely. Which is just basically B flat major and over G flat. Yeah, you could really make something out of that, actually. Yeah, you could make something really, really cool and sophisticated out of that. All right, we've got 9 minutes left of the show, folks. Let's go up and see if I've missed anything at all. I don't think I did. I think I pretty much got everything. Brett says, I find that half diminished chord to be the best as a passing chord to lead to another more resolved chord or just create an uneasy feeling. Yeah, half diminished chords are great. I love half diminished chords. there's that ninth with the half diminished chord. And then to a C7 flat 9, F minor, B flat 7 with the sharp 11. What we call a Picardy third cadence there. So I did the minor 2-5, but instead of going to G minor, which is what you expected, I went to G major. I ended up in C major. B flat major 9. Oh, I love major 9 chords. Major 9 chords. Here's a really easy way to make a major 9 chord. If that sounds complicated to you, because let's take a B flat major 7 chord, which is basically just D minor over a B flat. Now to make that into a 9. Turn that into a D minor 7 over a B flat. Or you could just turn that into an F major triad over a B flat. And it means moving about using this chord type is very, very easy. Yeah, major 9 chords are beautiful. They're very, very cool. All right, we got 4 minutes left. Let's see. Yes, thank you, Secret Squirrel. Smash the like button. Absolutely smash it, and then smash it again. Well, actually, you can only like it once. If you try and do it again, it unlikes it. So don't do that. Just like it. Thank you. And if you're not a subscriber here and you're kind of trying to get into the chat, I'm sorry. I should have said this at the start of the show, and I normally do, and I just forgot today. You'll need to subscribe. So hit the subscribe button. It's over there somewhere, or it might even be over here. I think it's over here. So hit that button and then the notification bell next to it and select all notifications from the little menu that pops up. And you'll not miss either of my shows. You'll not miss any of the new videos that are coming up in the next few weeks. And you'll also not miss any of the community posts I put up. Like, for example, if I need to cancel a show for whatever reason, I tend to put that up in the community posts. So you'll get a notification of that as well. So that's a really important thing to say. So thank you for the prompt there. Sean White says, in modern music, how strongly are the rules of voice leading with seventh inversions in the common practice period followed? Good question. In popular music, some of the rules are followed, but some of them just aren't. They're just kind of ignored. For example, in popular music, we don't tend to resolve dominant chords. I mean, this is definitely true, you know, with a 12-bar blues, where you've got a G7 chord going to a C7, going to D7, you know. So they don't tend to get resolved at all, apart from maybe at the end where you get the... There is a sense of resolution there, I suppose, with the... But not really. So there are some voice leading that has to work. For example, let's take that minor 2-5-1 in G minor. So I've got the third inversion A half diminished chord here, which is basically a C minor over A, and then I'm going to a D7 sharp 9, so that's the voice leading there. Listen to the top note here. Okay, so that's where there is kind of a melody in these chords. Okay, but watch how the other voices move as well. So that note pretty much stays the same. It just changes function, and then that resolves down to the third, to the minor third. And then look how the bottom note, the seventh, works. That goes down by step. Okay, so kind of when it goes to the G minus 7, it doesn't really resolve. Okay, but you can see how the internal voices move by step. So this guy goes C, C, B flat. The top one goes E flat, F, D. It's all kind of stepwise movement. Okay, so there are voice leading techniques that need to be adhered to when you're, when you're doing something like a 2-5-1. In order to make it work, So there, basically, I did. I went the 2-5-1 in D minor, and then I turned that into a half diminished chord here. So I went G half diminished 7, C7 flat 9, F minor 11, B flat 7 flat 9 sharp 11 to E flat major 7, A flat 13, D flat major 7. So that got me from G minor to where did we end up? D flat major. So that got me from there to a key center, a tritone away. So there is some voice leading there. All of those kind of move together. So there's a little bit of a melody with the top note. And then all the other internal voices are moving mostly by step. Yeah, in order to get that. I hear the F going down to the E. Are we having an after chat? I don't know whether we are having a Zoom call after show or not. But yeah. And that's how you do that. All right, so that is the last question of the show. Rich says he can launch a Zoom, I guess. We can certainly do that. If you would like to, just drop the link in the chat. You probably have to do it under your admin Studio One Tuts, though. There we go. Enough drumming. So yeah, drop that into the chat, Rich, if you would like to do that, and then we can pop over there, and that could be quite fun to talk about that a little bit more whilst I finish my cup of tea, and then I'm going to be heading to bed because I have a very, very busy day tomorrow. Because I wish I could tell you, but it's going to be a very busy day. Oh right, okay, so we're going over to Lander, Eleanor. For a session over there by the looks of it. Cool. All right, folks. That is the end of the show. I will see you on Sunday for Sunday Night Live, where we'll be doing Studio One questions and all of that fun stuff. So if you have Studio One questions, have a think about how you want to do that. You can either go down to the website below and you can fill out the contact form. And when you're there, you can just drop me an email and I can take your question that way if it's a bit more of an in-depth question. Otherwise, save it and we will deal with it in the chat on Sunday. Make sure you're subscribed to do so. Other than that, I will see you then. I will bid you all a very good night. Good night.